Why don't you go and have sex with my friend? And I would really enjoy watching it while you're doing that. Why don't you go and use your body to just earn a couple of bucks or make more money? Because you have got that body and you have to use it. Be bold enough. As derogatory, destructive, immoral, invalid, disrespectful, and shameful these suggestions are, so is the effect they have on the mind of a survivor, on the identity of a survivor, on the perception of the survivor that is created about the world and about themselves. It is a very common experience among survivors to be treated as sexual objects, to be pushed to perform very immoral sexual acts that they just start hating themselves. They start losing their identities and become something else, something similar to sexual objects that are meant to be used in different ways as per the narcissist's wishes. This behavior of narcissists tells us a couple of things about their inner world and how they see you, how they saw the relationship. The way these suggestions are made and the way you are pushed to perform such acts tells us that these narcissists see their partners as mere sexual objects that they can use, that can be used by others, or that they can degrade as per their own wishes to feel powerful. And it also tells about their inner world, how destroyed, hollow, and limited it is. How they do not see sex as something that includes emotions also. How they limit the sex to only being intense than being intimate. How they objectify a human, something similar to a sex toy or something that can be used just for sex or fulfill the bodily desires. This tells us how shallow and narrowed their world is. But let us not forget that it has a drastic effect on the survivor. All these pushy demands, weird sexual fantasies, and disturbing in a world of the narcissist has a deeper effect on the survivor's mind than it may seem on the surface. What I can see when these suggestions are offered again and again and again, they're offered in a hypnotic manner, where the suggestions bypass the critical factor, the ability of a survivor to judge what is right and what is wrong, to the point where the suggestions read the subconscious mind of a survivor, thus normalizing the behavior, thus normalizing these sexual acts, these derogatory sexual demands. You may not know this, but this behavior of the narcissist can destroy a survivor's identity to the extent that a survivor starts to normalize these sexual behaviors. They start to feel this is what they are supposed to do. This is what it is meant to be like. They start believing what they are being told. And if you are someone who has been through something similar to what I am talking about, then you should know that it is not normal. It is not just unhealthy. It is not just sexual abuse. It is brutal sexual abuse. It is more than unhealthy. It is not just trauma. It is a hell lot of trauma that you have been through. Sexual abuse in narcissistic relationships is not as overt as you may want to think about it. There's a lot of violation of your personality, of your sexual self that happens at a subtle level, and most people fail to recognize it. The sexual coercion that happens in such a relationship is damaging beyond words. There is a lot of demoralization, degradation, and depersonalization that happens, but it doesn't feel like happening when it is happening to you. I can give you a small example and then you can connect the dots on your own. A narcissist slowly, gradually, and gently erodes your sexual boundaries. First, they see what you hate when it comes to sexual intimacy and then intentionally do it or make you do it. It could be sharing private pictures and videos and uploading them online on porn websites and then doing these things again and again, even when you do not want to do them, just to make you feel uncomfortable, to degrade you, to make you feel worthless, and to make you feel ashamed, guilty of things that you never did. Psychosexual abuse is one such crazy aspect of narcissistic relationships that is not talked about quite often. Some narcissists in some narcissistic relationships follow a very weird pattern around sex. They would have an intense argument with you, and during the fight, they would put you down, make you feel like a piece of trash, belittle you, and mess you up in so many ways psychologically. And then, right after this episode, this experience, they would want to have sex with you, which makes zero sense. Because who does that? How could you hate a person so much one instant and then the next instant you want to be intimate with them? The only thing that could explain this is the narcissist's desire to re-establish control over you because they feel like they have lost you and they need to put you back in the cage, in the trap. The only way they see to get you back in this context is through sex, through intimacy, and through owning you that way. But that messes you up as a human being because that intensifies the trauma bonding and that really creates this nauseating feeling towards sex and sexual intimacy in general. More about trauma bonding in a minute. Before we move further in this episode, I'm really curious to know, did you experience this? Let me know about your experiences in the comments below and help other survivors feel less alone in their experiences and in their recovery. The other big reason why a narcissist would want to have sex with you right after having an argument is because they are turned on by seeing you in pain or when they see you crying, which makes them a sadomasochist. Your pain gives them pleasure in a very bizarre and crazy way. They feel good, but sadistically. They get a high about being able to control you at such a deep emotional level. They feel good about being in control of your emotional state, which gives them a high, and then they are turned on in an orgasmic way, which is very arousing and that excites their nerves, and they want to have sex because they feel the rush of control over their environment and every element of it. As a person on the receiver's end, you feel devastated because you do not understand how someone would want sexual intimacy in a serious situation like this. You feel taken advantage of and used. You feel like an object that has no sexual identity of its own. In a nutshell, it's about power, not love or desire. Let's talk a little more about trauma bonding and how sex becomes a huge part, a huge component of it. In the beginning of the relationship, which we call as love bombing stage, sex is quite intense in some cases, but as time passes, things change and they deprive you of affection and connection, especially through sex. A time comes when sex becomes the only form of connection that you experience with a narcissist. They devalue you most of the time, and the only time you feel connected with them is when you have sex, which messes up the biochemicals like dopamine and oxytocin in your body. During the act, the hormones released in the body become a cocktail of different things that alter the perception of the connection that you have with this person. In simpler words, the perceived intensity of the connection with a narcissist is higher than what it is in reality. You get addicted and hooked to having sex with them. And this becomes another issue they shame you for later. They call you hypersexual, nymphomaniac, or say tyromaniac for wanting to have sex with them. Your drive is altered by the changes in your biochemistry, and sex becomes a huge thing that you become addicted to and something that you crave for even after leaving the narcissist. Have you experienced this? What have been your experiences like and what helped you in your recovery process? Share your experiences and answers in the comments below. Narcissists weaponize sex in so many ways. They do not only use it to control you overtly, but they also use it to inflict massive psychological and emotional damage. Sexual intimacy connects two partners not only at the physical level, but it takes them beyond it. It connects them at an emotional level, and ultimately, they get to know each other very profoundly. They get to know who they are. They feel each other's essence. And ultimately, that makes each partner more connected, feel more connected and more satisfied. And then that strengthens the bond. So having said this, you understand that sex is very important in a relationship. Its absence or abnormality causes massive damage to both the partners and the relationship that they share. Now let's try to understand the narcissist, how they use it
and how this sexual component is so imbalanced and abnormal. Narcissists treat sex as a tool to use against you. That's why there are 5 things that they do, 5 ways they use sex to use this tool and weaponize it. Number 1, they treat sex as the part of the bigger game. In the beginning, some narcissists create intense sexual chemistry. You feel that this is the best sex that you have ever had with anyone in your life. But it just happens in the love bombing stage. As time goes on, the devaluation stage starts. And as the devaluation starts happening, the narcissist starts to treat you like a piece of trash. And right there in that moment, they may start withholding sex. The sexual chemistry is gone. You can no more feel it. The intensity has lowered. And at that point, you think something's wrong. Naturally, you may start blaming yourself, your own body, or your own attractiveness, your worth, and ultimately it injures you who you are as a person, your personality. And because of the gaslighting and the manipulation from their side, it reinforces your own negative thought process about how you see yourself. As they withdraw from you, you start feeling abandoned. As you start feeling abandoned, you crave for the connection that you felt with them in the beginning. Not only sexual connection, but also the emotional connection. This is what happens in the devaluation stage. You go after them, you try to change yourself, you try to give in more. And there would be a moment when the homeostasis would be restored, or at least you would feel that it has been restored, that they are the same person you met in the beginning. In that moment, how the sex is weaponized is that when you have that sexual connection, when you have that sexual intimacy with them, it's the perception of its intensity is naturally increased and you perceive it way more than what it is. Why? Because the definition of connection with the narcissist is reduced to this sexual connection. And it is that moment when you have this sexual connection with them, you feel that you are connected again. You feel that sense. You feel everything is back to normal. And that is why in a relationship with such a person, with a narcissist, you may start craving it later. You may start wanting it more. And that is a point where they weaponize it again to shame you in a different way. You know, saying things like, you are sexually addicted, you are a sexual addict, you are this, you are that, you are clingy, you are so many things that they call. But you need to understand the brain damage, the psychological damage, the process of addiction that happens here. The sexual connection almost becomes the nervous system regulator for you. And this is how you end up feeling shamed every single time you want it. They neglect you, they distance themselves from you, they withhold it, and you feel torn apart even more. Ultimately, what ends up happening is that your personality changes. The fact that the connection, the definition of connection, the perception of connection, it has been reduced to the sexual connection, then they have the upper hand, and then they use this one thing to make you do things that are horrible to even talk about. The things that I'm going to share with you, I have directly, not personally experienced it, but I have directly witnessed other people experiencing it as they shared their stories with me. So when this dependency is created and you almost, become dependent on them, you just want something from them, that breadcrumb to feel stable, not to feel that pain of abandonment, they ask you to do bizarre things. They ask you to send nude pictures. They basically violate you sexually in so many ways that you would not accept if this trauma bond through sex was not created. They store your videos, the bizarre things that you can imagine what I'm talking about. Capturing videos, using your photographs, sharing them online. All of this is, incomprehensible in a relationship, but this is what you get reduced to. As this happens, as this goes on, your personality changes. So do you start blaming yourself. You start distancing and dissociating from yourself because the levels that you have stooped to are not an integral part of who you are as a person. They do not match with your values, but still you are made to do the things that you would not have done earlier or in the narcissist's absence. And that is how this sex goes way beyond and above in inflicting psychological and traumatic injuries. Now also, the punishments. We were talking about withholding earlier. Narcissists withhold it as well to punish you. Let's say they want you to do something that you're not ready to do, or you said something that gave them narcissistic injury. How do they punish you? If they have created this sexual dependency, sexual trauma bond, they would withhold it. And as they would withhold it, you would have to almost beg them for it, and ultimately they get the pleasure. They get the sense of control back, which is how they use it as a way of punishing. If you also were to look deeper into the sexual connection, you would see that it is almost a robotic act. In the beginning, there may have been intimacy, but ultimately, they just reduce it to a robotic act where they almost have sex with themselves, their own body. They glorify their own body. They get supply from how they are performing, how they are making you feel. That is the high for the narcissist. And as they know that you will still be there no matter how they treat you, whether or not they give you the sexual attention, they start treating you like a combination of parts put together as a puddle of flesh that they can use for their own gratification, for their own needs. And your needs are not even considered. And you, of course, would not even raise a question because you're already, your thinking process has already been modified. You have been programmed not only psychologically and cognitively, but also emotionally to accept this behavior because this is, at least I get this, at least they do this, at least I get to have sex with them or sexual connection. And then your brain makes something really big out of that small. A breadcrumb is made a whole bread that you may start thinking things like, well, they have sex with me, which means they're still connected with me. This is the mind fuckery that happens in this whole thing. That's why in the beginning of the video, the episode, I said that they just do not use it only to control you overtly, but it really changes you as the person. And this trauma shows up later, post narcissistic abuse, in the aftermath, that you have these cravings again to have that sexual intimacy. Understand that you do not need to feel shame because this is how you were programmed. The sex was your breadcrumb back then. This was a component of your trauma bonding. And slowly, as you see through the narcissist's personality and nature, your brain is going to change, your biochemistry is going to change, and you essentially are going to change and you're going to let go. So if you found this information insightful, please share your experiences and understandings in the comments below. And I'll see you next time. I'll talk with you next time. Till then, let the healing begin.